Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello, I'm Rory, and with me, as always, is Ken. How are you, Ken?
Grateful to say at the time of this recording, we are all well, we are all healthy. How are things in Counselling Towers, Rory?
Counselling Towers has one more person, Ken.
Tell me more, please.
Well, our daughter, who you may have seen if you've listened to the podcast on dyslexia, gave birth to our granddaughter, Izzy, yesterday, which I'm going to say yesterday, talk about the 24th of April, 2020. Baby and mother are well. And yes, we've got a new little person in our family. So we're super excited here at Counselling Towers. And we will be going to wave through the window at her in the next few days because we can't see her because of the current restrictions. But yes, very, very excited. I'm a granddad again.
That is fantastic news, Rory. A big congratulations from me, and I'm sure that I can speak on behalf of many of our regular listeners. We are absolutely made up for you. Thank you for tuning in. This is Counselling Tutor Podcast. This is episode 148. Today, we're going to be covering three different topics. We're going to start off by speaking about the disruption to study. So if you're on a formal training course to become a counsellor, a psychotherapist, what happens next? We're then going to be checking in with our good friends at CPCAB, where Rory, you met up with Kelly Bud to speak about some assessment methods.
Yes, it's really interesting, isn't it? Different forms of criteria in courses are assessed in different ways. As a former teacher, we had some very creative ways of assessing if students understood the criteria and passed, and Kelly is going to outline some of those, especially relevant in the situation we find ourselves in.
It is indeed.
Yeah,
indeed, Rory. And I guess we just clarify on that one. This is assessment of students that are studying, not assessments of our clients, because it's the same word, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But then we do kind of wander into practice with our last topic in episode 148. We call that Practice Matters. This is for our qualified practitioners, and we're going to be speaking about working with substance misuse. We recently had a lecturer, that's Linda Mather. She is an expert on working with substance misuse, and she has done a lecture for our counsellor CPD provision library, and we're going to be kind of overviewing and talking a little bit about that. And Rory, you're going to be sharing an interview that you did with Linda. But let's kick off episode 148, talking about disruption in study. What happens next, Rory?
Well, indeed, it's the $1 million question. It's a question that's being asked all the time in our Facebook group. And if you're not in our Facebook group, go to Facebook, type in Counselling Tutor. You'll find us. We're a closed group. Knock on the door. Come on in. Bring your tea or your coffee. And you'll be with thousands of other like-minded people in the world of counselling and psychotherapy. We've got students. We've got qualified colleagues. And we've also got supervisors. There's a smattering, a soupçon of tutors in there as well, and contributing to the world of counselling. And, of course, at this kind of unique time in our history, all the colleges and universities are closed. So I'm talking about April of 2020 for those maybe listening in the future. And a lot of courses are being online. And there's a huge amount of confusion around about how people are going to graduate, how people are going to do courses. And a lot of those are being kind of projected. A lot of the angst is being projected at awarding bodies. So I thought what I'd do today is just outline how qualifications are structured in the UK and who takes responsibility for what, so we can get a clearer picture, Ken.
Yeah, and as you say, Rory, it's kind of, I think, the hottest topic at the moment. We get more emails, we get more comments on Facebook, we get more people asking this in our weekly live get-togethers at Counselling Tutor. What's going to happen with my studies? I've contacted my learning provider. They're not sure. I've contacted my awarding body. They're not sure. And I guess that the big answer is that nobody is really 100% sure of what this is going to look like rolling out, Rory. But of course, there are ways that we can kind of tune into where we might get some more information.
Absolutely. And and I think what I'm going to outline today is really try to kind of put some light, take the heat out of this, put some light in is what we do at Counselling Tutor, and illuminate what's actually happening. So a lot of people are getting really frustrated at awarding bodies, be they our good friends at CPCAB or the other awarding bodies that award counselling qualifications. They're saying, why aren't they doing anything? Why aren't they giving us more information? And to be fair, awarding bodies are. The tricky situation is how qualifications are structured here in the UK. And when I'm talking about the UK, I'm talking about England, I'm talking about Scotland, I'm talking about Northern Ireland, and I'm talking about Wales. So the principalities of the UK, if you like. So in the kind of middle 2000s, the government of the time set up regulatory bodies for qualifications, like government overseen bodies that looked at qualifications and mapped them to the job market. Because in the 2000s, there was a huge change of qualifications being fit for work and employers. So the government stepped in, and what the government did is they looked at the kind of employment picture and then linked the skills needed for certain jobs and produced a big specification. And what they did was they set up, or three bodies were set up. So in England, it's Ofqual, which is the Office of Qualifications, and in Scotland, it is the Scottish Qualifications Framework, and in Wales, it is the Credit and Qualification Framework, and in Northern Ireland, it's a regulated qualification framework. So they are independent bodies who report to government, and it's they that make the decision about things like exams. So recently we've had A-levels, which are in the UK, and Ofqual said, yes, we could issue A-level qualifications. The government effectively, or the government's agents effectively made the decision. Now, the difficulty is they've not quite, at the time of broadcast, come to any conclusion about vocational qualifications, which counselling qualifications fit under. So we're keeping an eye on that, and we're going to post regularly in the Facebook page when there's an update of that. But our friends at the awarding bodies, who I'm sure everybody's frustrated at this. Let's not underestimate it. People's courses being cancelled, people at the end of the courses, people not knowing when they can do their exams. The awarding bodies have to go by what the government say. And they can't do anything until the government say. And I'm not quite sure that the government, and I don't want to be too political about this, know where they're going at the moment, or if they do know where they're going, they're not saying. So that's the picture at the moment. The awarding bodies can only offer guidance to your tutors or to your colleges or universities if they're told what to do by the government. So if they say, well, we're not having exams, it won't be the awarding body that says that. It will be the government who says we're not doing that. I did read yesterday that what they're thinking of doing is issuing the qualifications provisionally and then asking people to come back at some date in the future to sit the exam. But that's just something that's been floated along. I saw that in the newspaper. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. So please, no letters in the mailbag.
Holding you to that. Yeah. So I mean, what I'm getting from this, Rory, is that we know the frustration because we've been hearing that frustration. We can recognize that frustration. It's about where that frustration is directed. So if you are frustrated with your college because they're not giving you the information, it's because they don't have it. If you're frustrated that the awarding body is not giving the college the information or you the information if you contact, it's the same picture. They don't have it yet. It's the government bodies that still need to make decisions. And I agree with you, Rory. This is not about us being political, but just through the whole process of what is happening, certainly in the UK at this time at government level, there's a lot going on, a lot of decisions to be made. They're in the business of saving lives right now, and I guess it's about priorities. And I'm sure that there is planning in place and that these departments are working on it, and that information will kind of sprinkle down as it is available, and we'll certainly cover it. We'll cover it on our Facebook page that Rory mentioned, Counselling Tutor. Make sure you go and join that, because you're going to get those latest updates. You'll also get the latest news from going to whoever your awarding body is, their website. So if you find out who your awarding body is, go to their website. They will have one, and they usually have a COVID-19 update or kind of the status of where they're at, and you're going to get that information from them. But it is in unsettling times, and maybe there's some solace, if not much, but some solace in the fact that we're all in the same boat. It doesn't matter whether you're on a level 2, a level 3, a level 4, right up to a degree. I've got a colleague who's busy doing her doctorate at Oxford University, and she's in pretty much the same boat, in lockdown, being uncertain of what's playing out and how that's going to look going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I think we forget nowadays that the qualifications, to some extent, not totally, but to some extent, are the passport to employment. And the qualifications have to be robust. They have to be convincing for an employer to have confidence in taking somebody on. And this is what I guess this is what the government are juggling with A levels. And I don't want to be disrespectful to our young people, because they get a terrible rap every time the A level results come out. There's always some crusty person saying they weren't as easy when I did them. You know,
in that voice, of course.
In that voice, there's like a stereotypical crusty voice, isn't there? So I, as a former school counsellor, I know how hard that students work to get GCSEs and A levels, but their entries onto other courses, they're not necessarily an entry into employment. And the whole qualifications framework was designed to give employers the confidence of employing people in the UK with the rigor, with qualifications rigor, and ability to match industry needs. So I guess the government. I mean, I'm not in contact with anybody in the government, but I guess that is what they're chewing over now. If they let people qualify without taking an exam, then our employer is going to be confident about taking the people on. So it's very difficult. I produced a super duper handout, and I'm just going to give you the links to the major awarding bodies and also the qualification framework in your area, in your principality, be that Northern Ireland, be that Scotland, be that Wales, be that here in the UK, which is Ofqual. And you'll be able to just click on the links, and you'll be able to have a look at the websites and get the update. So I hope that's useful. And it'll probably be really useful going forward, actually, because they're always changing and updating qualifications. But I would say stick with it, and I'm sure the picture will become clearer. What to do next is not to panic, really.
Yeah, if you want to get Rory's handout that he's created with those links for you so you don't have to do the research, it's really easy to get. Go to counsellingtutor.com. That's our mother website, counselling with 2 L's, because we're based here in the UK. And when you get to the main website, in the top menu bar, just click on the podcasts tab, and that's going to give you our entire back catalogue of podcasts. Navigate your way to episode 148. That's today's episode. And when you click on episode 148, all of the show notes, that's what we call them. It's basically the summary of what we've discussed today will be outlined on that page. And you'll be able to grab Rory's handout showing you who you need to look to, I guess, with website links in your area. From that page, you just put in your email address and that will be sent through to you. And then I guess, Rory, what can a student do in the meantime with regards maybe self-directed study? Because we spoke quite a lot in a previous episode about our counselling study resources, but I know you've done a lot of work in that, Rory, mapping it to be more self-study directed, that you can kind of use this time, I guess, productively. And more than that, it kind of puts an element of worth in your life as well. That's the other thing we're hearing, is that one day blends into another. I've got no motivation to do anything. And the community of the Facebook group with some kind of self-directed study, we're getting some positive feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. And there's a couple of things here. There are some people who are doing their courses online. Their tutors have been very creative and very proactive, and I'm sure it must be a massive learning curve for them. They've been sitting in teaching face-to-face in classrooms, and then they've got to learn how to teach online. Thankfully, that's something I did at my last job, if you like. I was the senior lecturer at a college, and part of my job was to instigate blended learning strategies. And with that in mind, when I talk about blended, I mean face-to-face and working online. The Counsellor Study Resource does have what's called a roadmap, which I designed, and it has all the criteria from the major awarding bodies, and then underneath it's linked to the resources. And the lectures that I produce are as if I'm lecturing those courses. So lots of people have said, I can go in, listen to the lecture that you've done, Rory, and it's almost like having my lecturer telling me, what the theory is or what the information is, and then I can write my assignments. And it's been hugely well received by our members, and lots of positive messages in the mailbag. So if that's something that you want to take the opportunity of, or if you're a member, please go to that roadmap because it's just so useful.
Yeah, you'll find that just by going to our mother website again, counsellingtutor.com. Scroll down under the welcome and just find the Counsellor Study Resources link. Click on that. All the information is there. And I can share with you that at the time of this recording, which is April 2020, we have a concession rate available. So we're not selling access to counselling study resources to our regular rate. We have got a concession rate that has been put in place to help students during this difficult time. We understand people's incomes have been affected, and we are trying to kind of respond to that with a significant cut in price on that. And you can find that counsellingtutor.com. But there you go. That's study, sticking with studies, and of course assessment. You do your work, and we were talking about it now, Rory, in terms of the employers want to know that the training is robust, and the only way you can see if the training is robust is if you assess the people that are doing the courses so that they pass, get through, get their certificates, and are able to go on forward. But assessment confuses me. It confuses many people on how it's done. But you spoke with Kelly Budd at CPCAB. They are an awarding body here in the UK, and she kind of walked you through assessment methods.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when I first started teaching, it was traditional assignments. You'd set an assignment and ask the questions that needed answering, and then you would come back. And certainly at certain universities, that's still the case. NVQs, national vocational qualifications, are more of a craft base, and NVQs were developed to show employers that you had a range of skills. So they're more practical based than intellectually based. Although you need to read the books and commit to the study. So there's different ways of assessing if people have hit the criteria. So most awarding bodies will list, you can have an assignment, you can do a recording, you can take photographs. There's lots of different ways of assessing if somebody's done something. And Kelly takes us through the different forms of assessment and how they work. Very interesting. And if you're a tutor, I think quite a refreshing listen, because sometimes I think, and then I'll speak for myself, when I taught, I used to rely a little bit too much maybe on assignments.
Let's check in with CPCAB.
Check in with CPCAB.
And we welcome back Kelly Budd from CPCAB. And Kelly's going to be talking about assessment methods and different types of evidence. So this would be, I suspect, for the dreaded criteria, Kelly, that the students look at.
Yeah, I think looking at kind of how you show the evidence that you've met the criteria is often one thing that students particularly can struggle with. I know a lot of different awarding bodies ask for different things, and the kind of terminology we use might be confusing. So I thought maybe just a little bit of an overview of why we use different types of methods and the sort of ones that we tend to ask for might be handy.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because CPCAB qualifications are vocational qualifications.
Yes.
They're based in craft and doing and showing what you've done. And I think sometimes that can be difficult for people who've come from a very traditional academic background, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think partly what generated the different types of evidence that we ask for, the different types of assessment, is that the qualifications are vocationally based. They're practical. They're doing. It would be very, very hard, I think, to be able to assess a CPCAB qualification, particularly with just kind of an essay format or a kind of written documentation format, because so much of it is being able to show what you can do, to be in relationship with the client. And so the assessment methods really do kind of wrap around that.
Yes, and you've very kindly sent me a document around different forms of assessment, and it seems to be split into 3 categories. So do you want to take us through those categories, Kelly?
Yeah. Well, we ask for students to present evidence from 3 different types of, 3 different categories. The first one is documents. So documents might be things like learning reviews, which students often refer to as their journals. It can be things like self-reviews, so reflective pieces of writing about their own work. It might be case studies, case presentations. Often it's things like assignments, essays as well. Or even at level 4 and kind of practice levels, it's their client record, their supervision record. And I always used to explain it to my students as, if you're trying to figure out what's a document, did you write it? If you're the candidate, if you wrote it, if you put pen to paper, finger to keyboard, then it's a document. So that's a really kind of clear way of knowing that that's what that is. Regardless of what it is, if you put pen to paper, if you generated it, it's a document.
Yeah, well, that's so helpful, isn't it? So as part of this mixed economy, as we'll call it, or I'm calling it, part of it is maybe written material written by the student, or sometimes referred to as the candidate, but by the students. So what are the other 2 then?
Well, I guess documents are probably the most traditional form of evidence, so it's what you would usually kind of expect. On top of that, we really acknowledge the power of tutor observation. So that might be anything that's maybe a tutor feedback on a counselling session, from like intro counselling helping skills all the way up to your kind of diploma levels. Or it might be a tutorial record, or it might be that you've presented something in a class training supervision session and your tutor's written some feedback on that, or you've done a group discussion and your tutor's provided some written kind of documentation from their point of view of what they have seen you do. So with me and my students, I would always say, okay, so the first one's written by you. Second one, it's a tutor observation if it's written by me. So if it's got my pen to paper, my finger to keyboard, it's a tutor observation document. And tutor observations are really, really important. I think in one of the earlier podcasts, I think you and Ray spoke about getting kind of feedback from experts and people who are kind of senior peers. So essentially your tutor observation is your tutor knows the assessment standards and is able to say, yep, you did something, or you said something, or you were involved in a discussion where you showed your true understanding of this particular criteria, and I'm going to write that feedback for you. Or it might be feedback that's formative. It says you're almost there. If you shared a little bit more on this and this and this, or displayed this skill in more depth, then you would be able to meet the criteria.
Sure. And I think as those people who are listening who probably have teacher qualifications, maybe formative and summative. Formative is on the hop. Formative's on the hop, where you're kind of assessing as you're going, and summative would be an exam, I guess, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So formative, essentially, it forms as you go along.
Yes.
Summative is the summary at the end.
Yes. So that's really, really helpful. And then the final one is testimony written by someone else.
Yep. So testimony is essentially, if it's not the student and it's not the tutor, but somebody else has written something that says, yes, you did this, it's testimony, regardless of who it is. Usually it will be things like peer feedback. So your peer has observed you in a counselling session, they filled in a feedback form and you're going to use that for evidence. Or at the higher levels, it might be a supervisor report, it might be an agency report, it might be one of your agency team members saw you do a really interesting interaction and they wanted to write something for you. Usually that evidence comes from such a variety of sources that it could literally be anyone involved in your development. But your tutors will then need to see that evidence and make sure that that person is really assessing you against the right standards. But then they might corroborate that evidence by saying, yes, this really does show that you can do it. So it's often peer assessment.
Yes. So that's useful. A real mixed economy. And centres can get creative. So what's our kind of examples of this creativity?
Well, at CPCAB for our quals, we say this is our list of minimum pieces of assessment. You've got to do this many essays or this many tutor observations. But beyond that, if centres are working with a really interesting modality or they've got a really kind of creative programme, we really don't mind if centres set their own pieces of work that can show the same evidence. So it's been posters, presentations, art projects, essentially anything that gets the learners to demonstrate their knowledge. I always used to joke with my learners that I'd get them to do a piece of dramatic interpretation or a kind of a creative dance in the classroom to show that they understood Rogerian concepts. Sky's the limit. Do what you like as long as you can see they're learning through it. We really don't mind.
I've got an image in my mind of a group of students dancing their way through the 19 propositions.
Yes. Make it into a musical. It could be anything that you wanted.
I'm sure there'll be tutors listening to this saying, thanks, Rory and Kelly.
They're going to have students asking to display things through the medium of dance now, and it will all be our fault.
or cake making or something like that. But it does go to prove, doesn't it, that vocational qualifications are a mixed economy of qualifications, and also it seems kind of fun as well.
Yeah, it should be. I cannot imagine having done my diploma and just having to write every piece of evidence myself. It would have been so dull. Getting the feedback from peers, getting the feedback from tutors, being able to do creative art projects to show what I learned, that made it far more fun. I don't think I could have done it otherwise.
Yeah, and I think it's a very important distinction between vocational qualification and what you might think of academic, traditional university qualification. And maybe hearing that, people can think about what might suit them. Some people might think, I'd prefer to do assignments, maybe prefer to do the university route. But a lot of others might think, well, this sounds a lot more fun and a lot more kind of mixed. And I'm quite good at dancing. So I may sign up for that course.
Yeah, I think that's it. Think about where your strengths are. If you're a creative person, if you want to show really that you're all about relationships and that you are happy for people to kind of see you doing that, but maybe putting pen to paper isn't your favorite thing, then maybe kind of choose your course based on that. Absolutely.
And I think sometimes we forget that vocational qualifications were built to give people a different route than the traditional academic route. They were designed especially to help people who weren't, and I speak for myself, not particularly academic, to be able to pass a course at a higher level, but by producing different forms of evidence.
Yeah, we even try and make our exams more interesting. They get to watch a DVD whilst they're doing their exam at level 2 and 3. So at least it's got something that's a bit of more of a mixed medium. It's dinner and a movie, or exam and a movie.
There we go. I'm not sure how exam moderators would feel about people bringing popcorn into the exam room, but it feels like a way of maybe working to different learning styles, and to make sure that everybody's got a kind of fair crack at passing the criteria. There'll be something in there that will suit everyone. The documents that's written by the students, the tutor observation, which is written by the tutors, and testimony by someone else, means that, there's quite a lot of different, lots of different evidence being produced. And I think it takes the pressure off a bit as well.
Yeah, it really gives variety so learners can show their best in whatever form they come across best in.
Well, as always, Kelly, it's a pleasure hearing you talk about the way it's assessed and CPCAB in general. Personally, I'm off to rehearse a musical on phenomenology, and you may hear me singing as I go off. But as always, Kelly Budd, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rory.
Check-in with CPCAB is proudly sponsored by CPCAB, the only awarding body run by counsellors for counsellors. To learn more about CPCAB qualifications and to get more detailed information on today's podcast topic, visit cpcab.co.uk.
Well, there you have it. Lots of different ways of being assessed. And if we go back to the first part of our podcast episode, where we're talking about learners working online, I think that more creative forms of assessment will probably follow. But really, really useful. And I hope you get a sense just of how your work is assessed, because I think sometimes it's not really, really clear, perhaps.
Well, thank you very much for that, Rory. Moving on to Practice Matters, where we look at a presentation or something that would relate to being in practice, where maybe a client would come in and speak about something. And today, Rory, you had a interview with Linda Mather around working with substance misuse.
I did. The fab Linda Mather, who has a lot of expertise on working with clients who may be abusing substances, which is the correct way of the terminology to talk about people who are having difficulties with that. Substance misuse is the term. And she's done a fab lecture for us on working with clients who are in substance misuse, different forms of substance misuse. And I caught up with her just to have a little conversation about what she covered in the lecture, and just for her to share a little bit of her wisdom. And boy, has Linda got a lot of wisdom, Ken.
Well, let's dive straight into Practice Matters.
Practice Matters.
And with us is Linda Mather, a therapist who has an interest and a speciality in addiction. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Rory.
Yes. And why is it that counsellors should have an idea or a working knowledge of addiction?
I think it's really important that they know the different types of drugs and the effects, because different drugs have different effects. So that's important. It's important also to know why people use drugs, to gain some understanding of that.
Yes, why do people use drugs? I think that's a question that a lot of people would be interested in. Why do people use drugs?
Well, there's lots of theories, Rory, as to why people use drugs, but my belief is it's an emotional regulation tool. When we're younger and we have a row with his mum, or a boyfriend, girlfriend dumps us, at times like this, when we experience pain when we're younger, we find our own emotional regulation tools. When you and I was young, we'd go down a youth club and we'd have some fun, come home and feel much, much better, and realise that, to have fun regulates our emotions. Or we might read, or we might watch an action movie, and then some of us will go out feeling pain and we'll be offered a glass bottle of cider. And in this day and age, in this culture, we get offered a joint or some substance, and we learn that regulates us emotions, that makes us feel better, and that's what we. And same with gambling, a few coins in the fruit machine makes us feel better. And I think that's how it all starts. And that's my belief in how substances start.
Yeah, so mainly people start using substances because they've got an emotional issue that they want they want to get rid of, or maybe just don't want to engage with. And I think you've said something really that resonates with me. When we're younger, getting a bottle of cider. I'm not saying anything about that, but I seem to remember that myself and my peer group at the time may very well have done that. But nowadays, people will go for the vast array of substances available, and some are a lot more dangerous than others in terms of addiction, aren't they?
The only two really that are physically addictive are heroin and alcohol. The rest are classed as psychologically addictive. So when they stop using other drugs, they may suffer anxiety, particularly with a stimulant, or depression. However, with heroin, they get physical reactions. They rattle. And if you imagine the flu and times it by 100, that's what they go through.
Yes, and that's what we call withdrawal, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And for those of you who probably would want to be interested in what withdrawal looks like, there was a film made I think in the 80s or the 90s called Train Spotting, and it showed a group of heroin addicts, and one of them went through withdrawal, and it's a pretty nasty business, isn't it?
It is interesting. I've never watched that film, but heard a lot about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really an interesting takeaway already. The fact that some drugs are physically addictive. You've talked about heroin, which of course I guess is every parent's nightmare. But it's interesting, isn't it? You also mentioned alcohol, which from recollection, I could go buy that in my local supermarket.
Yeah, it's legal, isn't it? And some will say it's one of the worst drugs on the market. When people are giving up alcohol, it's really, really important that they don't just stop, because that can create seizures. So, it's important that counsellors know that, because we automatically, if somebody says, I'm going to stop, we think that's great. But with alcohol, they're put at risk. So it's about reduction, a slow reduction of alcohol, or a detox in a detox unit.
Yes, I mean, I think that people think there's different degrees of alcohol addiction, but for the most extreme degree of it, it can actually cause death just coming off it, can't it? It can literally.
Yes. Yeah. The body produces a toxin to manage the alcohol that you're using, and if you start to reduce your alcohol, if you stop your alcohol, that is still being produced, and it goes to the brain and causes seizures and in some cases death. Good
grief. That is a very, and I use the word slightly ironically, sobering thought, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That by actually stopping something that is damaging you could actually die of a seizure. So already we're getting the sense that a therapist who's working with someone who may have an addiction or be using alcohol may very well need some extra skills and some extra understanding. I mean, that's going to be a great takeaway. Don't say to people, just stop, just don't use it anymore. So that's really useful. What other areas do you think what other gaps of knowledge do you think that therapists have in terms of addiction?
How to work with people that have got an addiction, techniques and tools that maybe they can work with. For example, somebody just stops using cannabis. They may have been using cannabis or any drug for lots of years, and all their emotions that they've been suppressing for such a long time will come bubbling to the top and be overwhelming for them. So it's about doing this at a steady pace and working with them with the emotions. Or we keep talking about emotions, but also people overthink, don't they? And substances slow that down. And so that the therapist, as they're reducing, can work with anything that comes bubbling to the surface while they're doing a reduction.
Yes, I mean, I think you make a really good point there about the feelings coming back. Many years ago, I worked with, I trained a therapist who had been in recovery for quite some time from alcohol addiction, and he'd been into a rehab. And what they said to him was, well, there's some good news and some bad news as you leave. And he said, what's that? He said, the good news is that you've got your feelings back. And he went, yeah, I have. And he said, the bad news is you've got your feelings back, because I think what the therapist was saying was that you're going to be engaging with a whole new kind of array of emotions that maybe the substance you've used has kind of blocked out or completely avoided. And now you're going to have to kind of, work with them and kind of engage with emotion.
And I think that's an important point, and is why, as therapists, we need to ensure before a reduction or during the reduction that they have healthy emotional strategies in place. Otherwise, there's a high risk of relapse, because if that's their only emotional regulation tool, then they're going to go back, aren't they? Because, every day of our life, we face emotions, don't we? Some are good, some are bad. And we need to know how to manage those emotions healthily.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, therapy is about managing emotions and the way we think, and helping to kind of secure our view in the world. But you make a very good point that therapists need to understand that when you're working with someone with an addiction, or that it has to be gradual, because, as you say, if you come off it immediately, it becomes completely overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. And those healthy emotional regulation tools in place is more chance that they'll use them than go back to their normal go-to.
Yeah, so very much about helping people engage and use the tools that are acquired in therapy, as opposed to going back to using the substances. So, I think that's really important, and I think it's a part of counsellor training that is kind of a little bit not covered. I get the sense that it's not covered in traditional counsellor training.
It depends on the tutor. I covered it when I was teaching up to diploma level. I think I covered it on level 2. But what we cover is what we're experienced in, isn't it? And if you're a tutor that's not experienced in substance misuse, then you're likely to use a subject that you are experienced in.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the same in my teaching practice. I've worked with people with substance misuse issues, and I used to include it in my kind of preambles and conversations, but it isn't really in the criteria. So no. I think that has been really, really useful. And Linda Mather, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rory.
So important, isn't it, Rory? It's CPD, just listening to this podcast. Such a lot of information, so many different kinds of substances that can be abused. I guess a lot of different knowledge there, and it's a complexity. It's not a client group that one would want to work with without doing the relevant training to be in service of that client group.
Yes, I think there's quite a few things there. There's understanding the different forms of substances that people take and the effects it has on the body, the motivations for people to take substances. And then when I talk about substances, it could be alcohol or drugs, and also the struggles that people have trying to come off them, the reasons why people get involved in substance misuse. There's for those who struggle with it, there's usually a backstory that comes out in therapy of why they wanted to use certain drugs, or alcohol. So really important that practitioners understand that it's a mixed economy when you're working with a client who is using drugs, and you've got to be very, very thoughtful of their frame of reference. And Linda really outlined it really well.
Oh, so well indeed, and it's so important to recognise that certain kinds of presentations, the importance of kind of learning to best support those clients. I worked for around 5 years in supporting clients with substance misuse. It is a very challenging, I guess. I don't want to say it's a challenging group to work with. It was challenging for self, because sadly the nature of substance misuse is there are more more unsuccessful discharges than there are successful discharges. That is the truth of it. It is substance misuse, alcoholism takes away lives. It's a difficult place to work, but it is also an incredibly rewarding place to work. I still have contact with some of the clients that went through the rehabs and detoxes that I was working with at that time. Not personal contact, but through groups, Facebook groups, and they are now many, many, many years clean and sober and living meaningful, productive lives. And I remember them kind of walking in broken with no options. So it is very challenging, but very rewarding. And if you're interested in learning more about working with clients with substance misuse, hearing Linda's complete lecture, that is available for our qualified practitioner friends from our resource. It's a library that we offer of CPD. And you can get that by just going to counsellingtutor.com. That's our mother website. Just scroll down slightly and you'll see it's right there, Qualified Practitioner CPD. Click on there and you can either buy a 1 month pass to kind of access all of the lectures in the library, or if you like, you can take an annual membership. It's cost effective and it kind of will give you your CPD on presentations, running your practice for a year. So there it is, counsellingtutor.com if you want more info.
Yeah, well, it's been a interesting podcast and very contemporary with times we find ourselves in. We started off with disruption to courses and tried to cast a little light into the heat of uncertainty around qualification end dates and exams and the general lack of information that's coming out, I think, from government. So we've covered that. We looked at assessment methods with CPCAB. So now you'll know exactly how qualifications are assessed and the different ways of assessing. And finally, we caught up with the fab Linda Mather, talking about working with clients in substance misuse, and she shared her experience and her wisdom. So that brings us to the end of this podcast. And as always, stay grounded, stay safe.
If you're a qualified counsellor or psychotherapist, then why not check out the Counsellor CPD Library? Stay current with your CPD requirements with over 150 hours of academically rigorous, on-demand lectures you can stream to your device. Joining Counselor CPD will expand your skill set to create a more specialised, highly rewarding practice. For more information on the Counselor CPD Library, visit counsellingtutor.com.